Yes? Excellent. Okay. So I'm really excited about this. It's going to be a great panel, and I'm a daily, multi-times daily active user of one of these two apps, so you'll have to figure out which one. Okay. So we just want to do real quick who you are, what apps you work on, the usual story, and then we'll get into it.
Awesome. My name is Adam Marchick. I'm CEO of Kahuna, and our job is to help our customers deliver messages that their customers love.
I'm Terry Zamora, and I work at GoPro as head of CRM and platform engagement. And my job is basically to migrate GoPro to a direct-to-consumer relationship with our customers as we start getting into the software and services business and we become a media company.
I'm Dan Blumberg. I'm a product manager at the New York Times. I work just to grow our mobile audience across our iOS, Android, mobile web apps. I also work with a number of our partners where we distribute our content.
And only the New York Times app, or any of the other internal apps that you guys have?
I work on the New York Times, what we call internally the core app. I've not worked directly on NYT Now, if that's what you're asking about. Yeah. But I've been very active. I talk to those guys all the time. We're sharing what we're learning, but I don't work directly on NYT Now. I work on the main app on
Flagship.
iOS and Flagship. That's a much better public-facing term for it. Yes.
Okay, so let's get right into it. So Adam, I'm gonna tee this softball up for you, but just at a very high level, what do you think the impact of mobile and maybe even specifically mobile apps have had on marketing in general, but especially on like life cycle, like what's possible on life cycle side?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, guys, it's mobile has made marketing much more complex. And it's much more complex because of the platforms and the channels. That the first thing is users now have multiple devices. So you have to take a person-centric approach. If you take a device or session-based approach, it's going to be pain and suffering. A great example of this is if you send someone a cart abandonment push notification and they bought on the website 5 minutes ago, that's spam. And the threshold for what a consumer is willing to take is much higher now. The second is the channel. Before there was email. Now you have to think about how push and email work together. And so when you're going to do marketing, think about how that message would look on a push, how that message would look on an email, and then for every single person, you got to know if they prefer a push or an email. And the answer is not to send to both. Because if someone gets a push and an email saying the exact same thing, that's spam as well. So I think marketing in the mobile era is about authentic personalization.
Well said. And I want to come back to that if we have time too. Okay, so I'm going to tip you guys off. It's the New York Times that I use every day. No offense. No offense. Okay.
Hopefully I can convince you otherwise.
Yeah, all right. Strap something to my head. Let's do it. Okay, so I'm a daily user, a multi-time daily user. How do you build more users like me in terms of habitual usage? Like, what are the key areas that you focus on to do that?
So we've learned a lot. You mentioned, or you hinted at NYT Now, which we launched about a year ago. We've learned a lot from launching that app. One of the things that we're really focused on across all of our apps, our email, our social channels, is finding the right, talking to people, in a much more personal way, looking for moments where they might be likely to engage in the Times. One of the most popular things that we launched with NYT Now, which is now on the flagship app, is the morning briefing. So every weekday morning we publish an article that just rounds up, and it's often phrased in the like busy morning. Here's what you need to know, and in a couple minutes you get up to speed very quickly, and you know what people are going to be talking about when you get into the office or at school. You're going to look smart that day, and you can get that very quickly. So that morning briefing has been really valuable for us. That's helped build a habit among our readers. You'll also see things like we're thinking about where are people at in the evenings. Video. We have videos that tend to be very popular in the evening, so we're thinking about that. We're just generally thinking a lot more about context. And one of the biggest things that we've done just in the last week, we released a major update to our iPhone app, and the Android update is coming soon, where visually the flagship iPhone app now looks different. It'll look a little bit more like what you've seen in NYT Now, sort of with cards. and less like I mean, for many years, our iPhone app has been very, very utilitarian, and a lot of our readers, I guess you're one of them, really actually like that. You can get through a lot of content very quickly. But it's really been a downstream representation of what's on the New York Times website, desktop website, and mobile sort of downstream of that. And we now have editors who are staffed 24 hours a day who are editing just for mobile. And so the changes that we made last week, the front-facing changes are not. You're not going to see a huge change, but the real change is behind the scenes. We did a lot of CMS work that's going to enable editors to edit just for mobile, so they can rank a story higher on mobile if they think that it's going to fit, a user's day in a different way. It's not just scraping what's on the website and bringing it downstream, and that's going to make a really big difference for us.
So a lot of that sounds like, and the briefing things are great. A lot of that sounds very content centric. How much does that also pair with whether it's push or email, and taking that sort of new content and getting it in front of more people?
Yeah, so again, we've just, in all of our messaging, whether it's through email, on social, again, we're talking to people, we're trying to write for whatever we're writing for. So in email, we've recently changed our email onboarding. So if you shared your email address with the Times, we have a series of emails that you go through, and for the longest time, they've been very focused on trying to get people to buy a subscription. We've recently changed that, the onboarding flow, and we're still mentioning that you can buy a subscription, but it's really much more of a guided tour. We publish 300 URLs every single day, and so the Times can be very overwhelming for a new user. So we're trying to get people to experience different parts of the site. We know that retention's much higher if people read from many sections of the site than if they just read from just politics or just business. So we're trying to give people a tour. And then on social, we're writing things. We had sort of, we were auto-tweeting for a long time. Now we're writing, tweets, almost 24 hours a day. Now we have someone staffed who's writing tweets and Facebook posts that are just for that. And then in terms of push, for many years we've had breaking news notifications, which, if the newsroom deems the story big enough, they send a push that goes to, several million people, and it's really high-level stuff. So-and-so announced they're running for president. Some event in Afghanistan, some major events. We're now starting to play with push in different ways, and so we're trying to figure out what we have license to do. But we may push something that is a major investigation. It's not necessarily a breaking news story, but it's a great read. It's a great piece of journalism, or it's just something that's been shared a lot. We may push that. We've also been. And one of the things that we're able to do now is we have tools to be able to send push to small groups of people and to A/B test those pushes and really get a sense of how much engagement did that push drive, how many opt-outs or how many uninstalls were the downside result of that push. We're able to, if we set up a sort of an automated push, which we've been doing. Someone before mentioned the stat that if the user doesn't open your app, I think, twice within 7 days, then there's a 60% chance likely they're never going to open it again. So we've actually been running one campaign directly right at people who are at that day 7. They've only opened the app once and only once, and so we've been sending a campaign to those folks and automatically have been shifting. We've had a couple versions of it, and we're automatically shifting to the one that's performing the best. So we're playing with push in a couple different ways.
Okay, great. So shifting gears to GoPro just for a minute. So you're kind of building a CRM strategy, not completely from the ground up, but close to it. So what have been the key considerations you've made, both on the sort of content side and also on the system side, and tactics too?
Sure. I'm going to be echoing some of what Adam said on that front. The number one thing when it comes to GoPro and CRM is our business model is becoming a lot more complex than it's been. So a lot of you probably know GoPro as a hardware play selling through retail. We're a business that's transforming. We're going also to be a software and services business as well as a media business. So what that means is that the relationship with our users and customers needs to be at the forefront of everything we do. And that's a new concept within GoPro. So one of the things that's emerging as the key priority for us right now is basically the ability to understand the life cycle of our users on the hardware side of things, on the software and services side of things, and also on the media side of things. We may have users who will never buy a GoPro camera, but they're considered users because they will view our content. We may also have users who will buy a GoPro camera and share their content and upload video to our platform. So there's gradations of users, and understanding the lifecycle stages of these users, both across channels but also within the channels, is critical to us. There's another piece to the equation also that we're thinking about hard actually right now, is the role of our app in the context of GoPro as a brand. So if you look at our app today, it's primarily an immersive experience. So you get the app and you can view videos on the app. And there's a productivity element to it which allows you to pair it to the camera and have some basic features, some basic controls of the camera. In the future, that app will become a lot more productivity focused, and the sort of immersive content piece of it will be a little less prominent in the app. So as that dynamic changes, it's important for us to understand what does that mean from an in-app perspective when we're communicating with users. We're going from education and tips and tricks in a content-based app to probably more of a mission-critical type of messaging layer when we're actually asking people to use the app to control the camera. So I would say, just to summarize, the lifecycle aspect, and then in that context, also understanding lifecycle both within the channels as well as across.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, Adam, you've been quiet here for a minute. So first of all, you guys write a lot of really good stuff. I don't know if you write it or if it's all published in your name, but props on that. So you sit in a unique spot in that you have so many clients, you see so many campaigns, a lot of what these guys are talking about. So I'm hoping you could identify just a couple maybe takeaways for people here, things that you're seeing work either on the email or the push side, just general best practices or really effective campaigns, trigger or otherwise.
Totally, it's cool. And to build on Dan's point, like that is what warms my heart, is when people are using Kahuna as a platform for innovation. So one thing we built is this automated optimization where you can put 5 messages out there, and the message that is doing better automatically starts going to more people. And delightful marketing is about making every message count. And so, a number of other customers. Is Ethan from Yumly out here? Is Ethan? There he is. So the whole idea of what we've built, this predictive engine, is that customers can set up behavior-based marketing. And what Yumly, this awesome cooking and recipe app with tens of millions of users, has done is they've created an orchestra of behavior-based messaging. I won't tell you how many, but it's, think hundreds. And what happens is they're micro-segmented and micro-targeted. So the result is they all work in concert, and every person is only getting a message when they need and want one, and the message they're getting is personalized. And what happens is when you're getting that level of personalization, the consumer is glad they got the message, and they show they're glad by re-engaging. And so the result has been massive extension in LTV, and if you think about marketing industry norms, think 10x, and that's the level Yumly's performing at. Another really cool one is A-Trax. Any know A-Trax? Great streaming music service. So they've used Kahuna to crack what we like to call the humor algorithm. When and how often to use humor, which is actually, it's fascinating. They really spent a lot of time figuring out, like, should they do 2 messages that are humorous and then 3 that are informative, et cetera, et cetera? The result is they now have many of their consumers who tweet, "This is the best push notification I've ever received." And that's the power of marketing in the mobile era, of delivering marketing that your customers are glad they got.
How important, and this ties back to the panel we had earlier, if you guys saw it, how big of a deal is it for you guys to have a centralized platform for push and email versus, for app users, versus having those systems be distinct? And I think on the panel, everybody had a relatively sort of separate setup, which I think is still common. So how important is that for you guys, or was that maybe in the decision-making process?
Well, right now we have a number of systems right now at the Times. Some of which talk to each other well, some of which don't. So, I mean, I would like them all to be. They don't necessarily need to be the same system. They need to talk to each other more than they currently do. So, one of the things I was mentioning, our new email sort of welcome series. One of the things that we didn't do for a long time, we do it now, is actually just to track where did a user from what app or what site, where did they share their email. Where did they give us their email? Was it from the Times desktop website? Was it from our Android app? We want to talk to our Android users. We want to share Android-specific features with them, but we can't do that if we don't know if they're using the Android or the iOS app, or were they on our cooking site or Crossword. So we're actually now finally tracking that, and that will help us run smarter campaigns, whether it is on social or whether it is on through push or in the app generally.
Great. Any thoughts on that? The single platform approach, if you will.
Yeah, it's critical.
Mic problems.
Much better.
Yes.
It's critical for GoPro that we eventually do go to a single platform. Today, like most people in this room, I'm assuming, we're on separate platforms for email and push and community and other own channels. One of the things that's driving integration right now is what we call single sign-on or single user ID, which is the ability to understand what a user profile looks like no matter what the channel of origin might be and what the channel of usage might be. So we have a pretty big initiative to centralize user information in a what we call, a lot of people in this room might know this, an MDM, Master Data Management, which is a sort of a database that anchors all of our system. So the glue for our platform will be our user database. And the idea is then to Dan's point, to integrate with the right tools with the idea for the future that hopefully one tool emerges as the key application for us.
Great, awesome. And we are just now out of time, so that was perfect. So thank you guys, really appreciate it. Oh, Apple Watch. We've got an Apple Watch question.
I've heard someone might want an Apple Watch in the audience. If that's the case,
go on.
Kahuna is giving out Apple Watches. By that I mean one Apple Watch. Come to the booth downstairs of the networking event. Come by, say hi, talk to Kyle, Trevor, and myself.
Yeah, but what do we have to do? Oh,
you get two entries.
Lottery.
If you get two.
I actually just wanted, we have 10 seconds. I wanted to jump in. I didn't mention Apple Watch. So that was one of the things we were talking about, different types of messaging. We actually launched a new form of storytelling when the Times launched its Apple Watch app, also last week or the week before, which are these one-sentence stories, sort of bigger than a headline and smaller than a tweet, and that's what we could have just piped our headlines right onto the Apple Watch and just said, there you go, like there's our Apple Watch strategy, but we were actually thinking about the context of what does a reader want when they go to get the news on their wrist. So we invented a new form of storytelling, so you'll see that on the watch.
An even better reason to go to the Kahuna booth so that you can get a watch, so that you can download that app. All right, thank you guys. Everybody, if we give them a hand.
Thank you.